I will now take Sudarian for the meeting of the Planning Local Review Body held on 13th November 2023. I have present in the meeting Councillor Alex Allison, Jerry Convery. I have apologies from Colin Dewar, and I have Graham Horn attending as a substitute. I also have present Councillor Ferguson Miller, Councillor Frame. I'll just check, I don't see Councillor Horsham in the meeting. Check if Councillor Horsham's here. Don't see Councillor Horsham. I have present Leslie MacDonald, Richard Nelson, Norman Ray and Graham Scott, and I'll hand back to the Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll just go right into the agenda items. Agenda item number 1 is any declarations of interest. Agenda item number 2 is the minutes of the previous meeting, which is in pages 5 to 8. I will move these as a correct record.
I'll second them.
Everyone agreed? Agreed, thank you. Agenda item number 3. Item before us today is a notice of review from Wilson Architects on behalf of Mr Paul Biberbank. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the Planning Officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for the erection of a 2-storey dwelling house incorporating integral garage and associated access, and in part subdivision of garden ground of number 21 and in part change of use of agricultural land to residential use at 21 Mid-Lone Street in Braidwood. I'm firstly going to ask the planning advisor to describe the background to this request for review to our members. Tony?
Thank you, Chair. So this review relates to the refusal of a detail application for the erection of a dwelling house at 21 Mid-Lone Street in Braidwood. The application was refused on the 2nd of June this year. The report of handling on pages 25 to 33 sets out the reasoning to refuse the application. And the reasons for refusal can be summarised as follows. The proposal would be contrary to policy in NPF 4 and the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 on development in the Greenbelt, as it constitutes sporadic development in the Greenbelt and is not located within a settlement. Secondly, the proposal would be contrary to policy 14 of NPF 4, as it's not consistent with the 6 qualities of successful places in that it fails to achieve the characteristics of a sustainable place. The proposal would be contrary to policy 15 of NPF 4, as it fails to create connected and compact settlements and mixed-use neighbourhoods. The proposal would be contrary to policy 16 of NPF 4, as it does not constitute the delivery of high-quality homes in the right locations. And finally, the proposal would be contrary to policy 5, DM1 and GBRA1 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, as due to the scale and height of the proposal, it fails to make a positive contribution to the surrounding area. The appellant's notice of review, which provides the reasonings for seeking the review, are found on pages 75 to 90 of the papers. In summary, they are that the development of small-scale sites at the edge of existing settlements is deemed acceptable when it rounds off the village and is at an appropriate design and scale to the surroundings. The house is being carefully located and shaped so that the footprint responds to the footprints of the surrounding dwellings. It horseshoes the end of Mid-Lone Street, forming a pleasant rounding off of the village. And finally, the proposed house is of a traditional appearance and uses natural stone, natural slate, timber windows, zinc, render and cedar. It is very similar in both design and scale as the Swallows across the road from the appeal site. Turning to the matters that the board may consider should be taken into account today. Firstly, the proposed house would be sited on a plot which would be created through, firstly, the subdivision of the appellant's existing rear garden area. Now, this land is located within the settlement boundary of Braidwood, and the policy relating to development in settlements does allow, in principle, for the development of such sites for housing, for example. The rest of the plot is made up of a further area of land that isn't within the curtilage of the property, but rather extends beyond the settlement boundary and is within the green belt. So in determining the review, the following policies in the plan are relevant. As I said, as part of the site is within the green belt, policy 8 of NPF 4 and policy 4 of the Local Development Plan 2 apply. Both policies reiterate that proposals should only be supported in the green belt where they involve an appropriate use. An isolated and sporadic development will not be supported. In addition, NPF 4 states that it should be shown that, even where a proposal meets those terms, why a greenbelt location is essential for the proposal. The purposes of the greenbelt are not undermined. The proposal is compatible with the established countryside and landscape. And finally, the proposal is of an appropriate design, scale, massing and external appearance. Policy GBRA 7 of Local Development Plan 2 does refer to situations where extensions to settlements may be acceptable, but that applies only to the rural area and not to the green belt. Going on, MPF 4 policies 14 and policy 5, DM1 and GBR1 of LDP2 are relevant, and they provide a criteria on how to assess the impact of proposals to ensure they improve the quality of the area in which they would be located. And finally, policy 15 of MPF 4 in relation to local living states that proposals should contribute to local living principles. So consideration is to be given to the level of local access to services and facilities. I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. As members will now be aware, from the 13th of February 2023, MPF 4 was adopted and published by Scottish ministers. It now forms part of the Statutory Development Plan, along with the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has indicated that they are content with an assessment of review documents only, with no further procedure. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they do in fact contain sufficient information for us to determine the review today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think all the information that we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider this review, without either a site visit or hearing or further written submissions. Can I ask for comments? The members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information. All agreed? Agreed. We can then proceed to the review, and I will open for discussion. Any questions or comments? There's no questions or comments. I will summarise the points. The application is for planning permission for the erection of a two-storey dwelling house incorporating integral garage and associated access, and in part subdivision of garden ground of number 21, and in part change of use of agricultural land to residential use. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being in the settlement boundary for Braidwood and partly within land designated as Greenbelt. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposed rear extension and alterations at this location, and it would not accord with policies 8, 14, 15 and 16 of MPF 4 and policies 4, 5, DM1 and GBRA1 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, planning permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the proposed rear extension and alterations, we could grant planning permission subject to conditions. Our options here are to uphold, or reverse, or vary the planning decision. I will invite for any decisions and the reasons. There's no motions or amendments. Are members then minded to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission? Agreed. Anywise, otherwise minded? All agreed. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to refuse planning permission, and as we are satisfied that the proposed development would be contrary to policies 8, 14, 15 and 16 of National Planning Framework 4 and Policy 4, 5, DM1 and GBRA1 of the South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Thank you. We'll then move on to agenda item number 4. Review of case in respect of planning application P221633, pages 115 to 186 in your pack. Item before us today is a notice of review from Wilson Architects on behalf of Mr and Mrs Nathan Weald. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer determination to refuse an application for planning permission in principle for the erection of a dwelling house at Townhead of Preechgill, Low Kipe Highway, Straven. The planning advisor will first describe the background to this request for a review to the members.
Thank you, Chair. So this review relates to the refusal of an application for permission in principle for the erection of a dwelling house on the site of a former slurry pit at an existing farm setting at Townhead of Preescale, which is approximately 1.4 kilometres south of Straven. The application was refused on the 9th of June this year. The report of handling on pages 131 to 138 sets out the reasoning to refuse the application, and the reasons for refusal can be summarised as follows. The proposal is contrary to policy 17 of MPF4, as the removal of the slurry pit is not considered to reuse a redundant building, is not a reuse of brownfield land, it's not being demonstrated that there is an essential need for the dwelling for a farm worker or retirement succession of a viable farm holding, and it doesn't involve a subdivision or an existing residential dwelling or the replacement of a former dwelling. Secondly, the proposal is contrary to policy 4 of the adopted South Lancashire Local Development Plan 2, in that the proposed development has no specific location lead to be situated in the rural area and is considered to be sporadic development. And finally, the proposal is contrary to policies GBRA 1, GBRA 5 and GBRA 9 of the adopted South Lancashire Local Development Plan, as the proposed development is not considered to be located on previously developed land containing buildings, is separated from the nearest adjacent units, would not consolidate an existing building group, which would all result in a negative visual and environmental impact. The appellant's notice of review provides their reasons for seeking the review, and these are summarised on page 173 of the papers. So these include that the house is required to allow the succession planning for the running of the farm when the current owner retires. A statement explaining the background to this is found at page 175. In addition, they consider the proposal involves the redevelopment of brownfield land, and that the house would be designed to meet criteria on design, siting and scale, take account of the impact on the character and image of the area, and would incorporate measures for renewable energy measures. So in determining the review, the following policies in the development plan are relevant. As the site is within the rural area, policy 17, rural homes of MPF 4, and policy 4, Greenbelt and Rural Area of Local Development Plan 2 apply. Both policies seek to deliver new, high-quality, affordable and sustainable rural houses in the right locations. MPF 4 goes on to set out circumstances when rural homes can be supported, and they include where sites are allocated for housing in the LDP, the reuse of brownfield land, where a return to nature will not happen without intervention, where it reuses a redundant or unused building, involves the use of an historic environmental asset, is necessary to support the management of a rural business, is a single home for the retirement succession of a viable farm holding, or reinstates a former house, or is a one-for-one replacement. In addition to these policies, consideration has to be given to how the development contributes to local living as appropriate for a rural location, and guidance on that is set out in policy 15 of MPF 4. In all cases, the proposal should be suitably sited, scaled and designed to be in keeping with the character of the area. So in this latter respect, MPF 4 policy 14 and policies 5, DM1 and GBRF A1 of the South Lancashire Local Development Plan are relevant, and they provide a range of criteria on how to assess the impact of proposals to ensure they improve the quality of the area in which they would be located. I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. As stated before, MPF 4 from the 13th of February was adopted and published by Scottish Ministers. It now forms part of our statutory development plan along with our South Lancashire Local Development Plan. The next point for the PLRB is to consider and decide how to proceed with this review. The applicant has indicated they consider a site inspection and hearing session as appropriate in the determination of this review. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide whether in fact they do contain sufficient information for us to determine the review, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think all the information we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider this review without either a site visit or hearing of our further written submissions. All agree? Agreed. Anyone otherwise minded? Do the members therefore agree that we can proceed without a site visit, hearing or additional information? Yes. Agreed. All agreed? Yes. We can then proceed to review. I'll open the review for any discussion or comments. Councillor Norman Ray.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering, in the documents, it says that there wasn't sufficient information or the right type of information regarding whether it was the House was to provide for succession due to eventual retirement. But there is a document which I think has been submitted subsequently as part of the review, which appears to explain that is the intended purpose. Can we, I suppose it's more advice, can we take that into account now, or is that additional information that we can't consider because it was not part of the original submission?
Councillor Ray, I'll ask our legal advisor just to confirm.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Councillor, the Planning Authority in their response did make mention of the fact that they thought this additional information could be considered a new matter that was not before the original decision maker. However, having looked at the papers, you will note that there is reference to this being put forward by the applicant at the stage of making the application. Therefore, in that instance, is my legal opinion that it is appropriate for the PLRB to take that into account in your determination today as a material consideration that you can consider.
Thank you.
Any supplementary, Councillor Ray?
Yeah, well, on that basis, I think it seems to me that there probably is a case for overturning the original decision if it is indeed for succession. But I would obviously listen to other views on that. But.
Do you want me to come back to you to see if you want to put forward?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask for any further comments. Councillor Alec Allison.
Concur as well, if it is for basically a retirement house for someone working on the farm, that would be appropriate. Can I just highlight another issue, though? We need to be very careful what conditions we put on this if we are changing our mind, because it is not possible to get a mortgage if you have a restriction on the occupancy of the house. Just to bear that and keep that in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. I think if we are minded to overturn the officer's recommendation, then we can adjourn just for a few moments to have those conditions sent out, so we can all have a look at them. Is there any further questions or comments? If not, I'll bring in Councillor Norman Ray to see if he would like to move anything. Everybody finished? Councillor Norman Ray, if you press to speak.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to move that we overturn the original decision and grant permission on the basis that it is for the purpose of succession and retirement in the farm.
Thank you, Councillor Ray. I'm looking to see if anyone would second Councillor Norman Ray. Councillor Elise Frame.
You want your breakfast? You can sit there.
I'm happy to second that, Chair, for Norman. I'm happy to second that, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Alec Allison.
To second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Allison. Councillor Elise Frame beat you to it, so we have a proposal from Councillor Norman Ray and seconded by Councillor Frame. I'm happy to accept that decision from Councillor Norman Ray and seconded by Councillor Elise Frame. Is there any other motions or amendments to put forward to that? Therefore, we all agree that we overturn the officer's recommendations. We are going to adjourn just for, if we meet back at 10:55, that will give us time just to send out the conditions, and we can go through them just to make sure we agree. 10:55. Have we all had time just to read the conditions and the reasons for the application P221633? Is there any comments on these conditions? No comments. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to grant planning permission subject to the agreed conditions. And the next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. We'll then move on to agenda item number 5. Is a review of case in respect of planning application P221770, and it's pages 187 to 332 in your pack. The item before us today is a notice of review from S2 Architecture on behalf of Keene Premier Group. The applicant is asking the PLRB to review the planning officer's determination to refuse an application for planning permission for the erection of a flatted development of 6 units with associated access, parking and landscaping at Georgia Park Care Home, Greenlees Road in Cambuslang. I'm going to firstly ask the planning advisor to give us a background to this request.
Thank you, Chair. So this review relates to the refusal of a detailed application for the erection of 6 flats on land within the grounds of the Georgia Park Care Home on Greenlees Road in Cambuslang. The proposal has been described by the appellants as an annex building for the purpose of assisted living, with residents having the option of partial care from the adjacent care home. Each flat would have two bedrooms, one bedroom set up for a living carer, with the other being for the resident. The application was refused on the 4th of July this year. The report of handling on pages 199 to 208 sets out the reasoning to refuse the application. And the reasons for refusal in the decision notice can be summarised as follows. So the proposed development is contrary to policies 3 and 5 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, as it would result in overdevelopment of the site. It would result in loss of privacy and overlooking to neighbouring properties. It would appear cramped and out of keeping with the surrounding established pattern, resulting in a significant adverse impact on the character and amenity of the site and the surrounding area. Secondly, the proposed development is contrary to policy 2 of NPF 4, in that the proposal would result in the loss of several trees within the site. And finally, the proposed development is contrary to policy 14 of NPF 4 due to its design and the impact on the quality of the area, as it involves overdevelopment of the site, is out of character with the existing care home and surrounding area, and would establish an unacceptable relationship with adjacent houses, adversely impacting on the present level of amenity for those residents. The appellant's notice of review provides the reasons for seeking the review, and these are summarised on pages 261 to 315 of the papers. Just to summarise these, they say that the proposed developments should be considered to be an annex or an extension of the existing care home, and as such, residents will benefit from being able to use existing facilities. In terms of the surrounding pattern of development in the area, this is characterised by two-storey dwelling houses, and so the proposed development is not considered to be out of scale with the surroundings and provides appropriate levels of amenity. Every effort is being made to mitigate any potential overlooking issues and loss of privacy for the adjacent properties. The proposed development is short of its 20-metre target for window-to-window distances by 2 metres, which they consider is not significant enough to warrant a refusal. The trees are of poor quality, with many dead, and the remaining are of poor quality as they have outgrown the site. This will result in the trees at some point becoming unstable and possibly falling down, which has the potential to cause impact and damage to the care home and surrounding properties. The appellants have suggested in their notice of review 3 additional conditions which they consider would overcome some of the reasons for refusal. First one, that an amended drawings be provided before work starts on site, showing how the proposal wouldn't impact on the amenity of surrounding residents in terms of overlooking and overshadowing. Secondly, in relation to the loss of trees, that a scheme of landscaping be submitted prior to development starting on site, which would take account of the tree loss and include additional planting to compensate for that. And finally, a condition that the development would constitute an extension to the existing Class 8 care home facility and would only be used for assisted living and for no other use. So members need to take those successive conditions into account. And also the following policies in the development plan are relevant. So policy 3 in the adopted local development plan states that while the principle of residential development is supported within the greater general urban area, developments will not be permitted if they're detrimental to the amenity of existing residents. Policy 5 requires all proposals to take account of and be integrated with the local context and built form. The policy advises that proposed developments should not have any significant adverse impact on adjacent buildings or the surrounding streetscape in terms of layout, scale, massing, design, materials or amenity. And finally, policy 14 of NPF 4 states that development proposals should be designed to improve the quality of the area and should not be poorly designed, those that are poorly designed would be detrimental to the amenity of the area and would not be supported. So I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Tony. As we've already stated, the NPF 4 on the 13th of February, adopted and published by the Scottish Ministers, now forms part of that statutory development plan, along with our own South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan. The next point for the PLRB to consider and decide is how to proceed with this review. The applicant has indicated they are content with an assessment of review documents and with no further procedure. Taking account of what is in our papers, we have to decide if they in fact contain sufficient information for us today, or if we need more written information, a hearing or a visit to the site. I think that all the information we have, plus the detailed photographs we have of the site, does provide us with all we need to consider this review without either a site visit or a hearing or further written submissions. We all agree?
Agreed.
Do the members therefore agree we can proceed without a site visit hearing or additional information? Agreed. Agreed. All agreed? Thank you. We can then proceed to the review, and I'll open up the review for any discussion or comments. Councillor Alec Allison.
Chair, could I just ask for a wee bit more comment on why they think it is overdevelopment in this application? Looking at the site plan, it looks to be a fairly open area in an urban context and not taking away even the whole area. So why is it considered overdevelopment?
I'll ask the planning advisor to come in, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The case officer's report of handling refers to the proposal not meeting window-to-window distances in relation to adjoining existing properties. So there's a concern that there'd be overlooking and overshadowing, and there's also a concern that the usual standards that are applied to amenity space around to serve a flatter development are not met in this case either. So those are the two main reasons why the case officer thought it was overdevelopment. It also involves, as we said, a loss of trees, which again was taken into account in reaching that conclusion.
Thank you, Tony. Any further questions or comments?
Could just again, sorry, Chair, just the site plan circle in red, the application site. Is that whole site being taken up by the building, or is it just part of it where we have the pictures taken? And if so, where is the lack of distance from other windows?
I'll ask Tony just to confirm, Councillor Allison.
Through you, Chair. The drawing, the plan on page 266 of the papers shows how it's in effect three separate buildings would make up this proposal, and it shows how they relate to both the existing nursing home and the adjoining properties. The view taken by the case officer was that all three buildings are very close to the boundary with the adjoining properties, and so that's going to cause issues of overshadowing, overlooking, loss of privacy. As you can see as well, the view was taken that there's enough the land to the east of the flats is taken up with car park and the access road, so that doesn't leave an awful lot of land for amenity space that would serve the residents. So just summarising what it says in the report of handling, that seems to be the case why the case officer thought it was overdevelopment of the site.
Thank you, Tony. Any further questions or comments? No further questions or comments. I will summarise the points. The application is for planning permission for the erection of a flatty development of 6 units with associated access, parking and landscaping. The adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2 identifies the site as being within the settlement boundary of Cambuslang. If we consider that there is no valid policy justification to support the proposed rear extension and alterations at this location, and it would not accord with policies 2, 14, MPF 4 and policies 2, 3, 5 and DM1 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2, permission can be refused. Or, if we consider that there is adequate justification for the proposed rear extension and alterations, we could grant the planning permission subject to conditions. Our options are uphold, reverse or vary the planning decisions. I'll invite for any decisions or reasons. Are the members then minded to uphold the officer's decision to refuse planning permission? All agreed? Agreed. Therefore, the decision of the PLRB is to refuse planning permission, as we are satisfied that the proposed development would be contrary to policies 2, 14, MPF 4 and policies 2, 3, 5 and DM1 of the adopted South Lanarkshire Local Development Plan 2. The next stage is that a written decision notice will be issued by the PLRB, and this should be issued within 28 days. Agenda item number 6. I have no items of urgent business. Can I ask the clerk to stop the recording of the meeting, and I wish everyone a good day. Thank you.